Welcome to this week's episode of Talk of the Town. My name is Philip Swicegood and I am back with my good friend and co-host, Dr. Kenneth Harper from Vein Specialist of the South. If you have questions about your veins, give my friends at Vein Specialist of the South a call today and they will get you the answers that you need. And if you're one of our brand new viewers on WMGT, thanks so much for welcoming us into your home. We really do appreciate it. Here's what you can expect from us each and every week. A conversation with someone that's important in our community that's doing something to advance the Middle Georgia area. This week is no exception. We are interviewing Arthur, who is in charge of the Museum of Aviation here in gorgeous Warner Robins, Georgia. Arthur, thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Glad to be here.
You know, Arthur, we spent a little time catching up before we got on air today, and you told me as a child you came over to the museum with your dad and the memories you have, and now you're one of the curators for the museum. That must be pretty amazing for you to think about that happening. Tell us, for the community, kind of a little about the museum, maybe a little about how you came with your dad when you were younger, and start to introduce the museum to our audience.
Certainly. So the museum, as you know, has been a part of the community here since 1984. So close to 40 years now that we've been a part of the community. We are a United States Air Force museum, a field museum. We're actually the second largest museum in the United States Air Force. We have the unique opportunity to operate as a partnership as well. So we have the Air Force side and we have a nonprofit operating partner, the Museum of Aviation Foundation. So while the Air Force employees, myself included, we handle the artifacts, the exhibits, the aircraft, the restoration. Our nonprofit partner, the foundation, handles all of our fundraising, a lot of the day-to-day operations of the museum. They handle our volunteers, our marketing. We could not be the great museum that we are without them, so we're very grateful for that. You mentioned, you know, growing up here in the community. I did. I came here as a young child, so to be able to be the curator now is certainly a blessing, something that I'm very thankful for. It's an amazing place, and we hope to continue to be that for the community.
Now, Arthur, I'm like you, from Middle Georgia, and I have spent many an hour when I was young here with, I remember vividly with my mom and my brother and two of my cousins that they would come up and this was kind of our default place to go. Because, you know, as a young kid, all of the optics here are just incredible. There's so many fun things to do. And I'm curious, I know this museum has been here for a long time, but what are some of the new things that you guys have coming that people might not know about?
Certainly. So we tell people all the time, you know, even if you've been in the community for a long time, to continue to visit us, right? Because there are always new and exciting things here going on. So some of the things in the near future, we have in April of 2023, we have a F-117 Nighthawk that'll be coming to the Museum of Aviation. So we're very excited about that. A lot of people know that as the stealth fighter. And it will be here, like I said, April of 2023. We hope to have a community welcoming event for that aircraft when it comes.
So this is like a full-size stealth fighter.
It
you
is.
guys are getting here.
The actual thing.
Is that as cool as it sounds?
It is. It's pretty amazing. So.
Hey, does security get to take a ride in it before you kind of put it on the exhibit or something?
You know, I keep asking. Maybe one day they'll say yes. So yeah. So certainly that's something we're excited about. We have recently acquired an A-7D Corsair. So that's a light attack aircraft that was used in combat during the Vietnam War, and we hope to have that on display soon. A few other things, we have an AC-130 armament trainer, so that would be, for those who don't know, think of an aircraft with no wings. So it was used to train our airmen on the different armaments on an AC-130U, so that's great for guided tours and those type of things.
You know, I often see the involvement between the museum and the community, which I think is critical to education of adults and young folks about the importance of freedom and the importance of the Air Force and the partnership that we have. The other thing I see is, and I want you to comment a little bit about that, but the foundation and the museum that collaborate with the base to try to promote the base as far as for stability of the base and for the community. Can you share a little bit about those 2 points?
Sure, certainly. So as we've talked about, you know, we have generational opportunities here. We have families who've been here, you know, they've been here, they'll bring their kids here, hopefully they'll bring their grandkids here. And we talk often within the museum about how important that is for the Air Force. So not as many people serve as used to, correct? So what that means is a smaller percentage of our population understands the Air Force, its missions, its roles. So we see ourselves as an important bridge between the community and Robins Air Force Base, certainly. And that is our primary mission, to preserve the heritage of the Air Force. So we think that we can serve as a community gathering place where that knowledge is passed on.
Now, Arthur, we're sitting here towards the front of the museum, and there's a lot of people that they've probably been by the museum and they recognize the planes and the big building up front, but there's a lot more to this place that's behind us here. Can you walk through just a little bit of the layout and what this looks like?
Certainly. So it's very impressive. Let me just say that. If you haven't been, please come out and visit us. Around 50 plus acres, 4 exhibit buildings.
Wow. Somewhere
around 90 or so aircraft, missiles, vehicles,
wow.
Lots of exhibits. It's just a really impressive place to be.
And I'm curious, and I'm going off script here, but if you had to pick your just favorite airplane in this place, which one do you think it'd be?
Oh, that's a loaded question. So we have here in the collection in our Century of Flight hangar, there's a helicopter called the MH-53 Pavlo. That would probably be my favorite. A very interesting service history, 40 plus years of combat time from Vietnam all the way up to the War on Terror. My predecessor and I used to talk often about the uglier an aircraft is, the more interesting the missions. So I think the Pavlo is a great example of that.
Interesting. Now I understand y'all have some smaller artifacts as well. Can you tell us about that as well?
Absolutely. So of course, everybody loves the airplanes, right? They're the big showstoppers, but we have around 4,500 small artifacts in the collection. So that ranges from a uniform button to a flag to anything in between. So what we love about those things is they help us to tell the story of the Air Force, right? So we use those artifacts to build up a personal connection to the aircraft and the missions that the Air Force flies. A great example of that would be we have the uniform of Roland Scott. Roland Scott was the brother of General Robert L. Scott. We can talk more about him later. He's a wonderful man. But he was wounded in action, he was hit over Europe on a B-26 raid. The uniform is torn, it's tattered, it's bloody. It's a very powerful artifact that speaks to the violence of war and the sacrifice that a lot of our airmen have made through the years. So those smaller artifacts are just as important as the large aircraft.
Now we're having a great conversation with Arthur, and we will be right back after a quick word from Vane Specialists of the South.
I am 36 years old and a mother of 2 boys who play sports year-round. I am also a school librarian and enjoy a very active lifestyle. I play tennis, coach high school tennis, and strength train 3 to 5 times a week. My vein problems began in my mid-20s and became more painful over time. I never realized it was a medical issue or that something could be done to alleviate my symptoms. When I learned Vein Specialists of the South opened up a 3rd location near me, and Vein Care is the only thing they do, I knew I would get the very best treatment. It was covered by my insurance without a referral. The VSS staff were awesome. They made sure I was comfortable at my office visits and during my treatments. You won't believe the compassion you'll receive at VSS. I didn't realize how much my legs were hurting before. But after my treatment, my legs feel lighter and I'm able to stay active for much longer periods of time. If you want 5-star vein care, I encourage you to call Vein Specialists of the South today.
Arthur, we're sitting in front of a pretty amazing plane. I can see it over my shoulder there. It's showing up on our video. And it looks like we're kind of in the World War II section of vintage planes here. Tell us a little bit about those, and also about when you get an aircraft, what does that process look like for restoration?
Certainly. So the aircraft we're in front of here is an AT-6, so it's a light training aircraft, World War II vintage. The restoration process itself is always interesting. Restoration can mean anything from small repairs to a full rebuild. So our B-17G is a great example of that full rebuild. That aircraft came here in 2015. and was immediately put into restoration. And so we're about 6 or so years into probably a 10-year restoration process where we basically take the aircraft and break it down into all its small components, rebuild, replace, and it will essentially be as close to factory new as it can be when we're done.
So is flight worthy when it's fully restored?
It could be, but we are unfortunately not allowed to do that by the National Museum of the U.S. Air Force. But yes, it is as technically complete as it could be. Yes, sir.
You know, it was something happened recently in the community, and they were flying some vintage World War II planes in the community, and that was over at the other airport, I think. But it was pretty amazing to see those planes in flight.
It's always impressive, yes, sir.
So, you know, Warner Robins is obviously growing. I mean, all the data points to more and more people moving here, which is obviously more people that could come and see this museum. So if it's a family that's moving to town and say they haven't been to a museum like this, where do you think you would point them to start? And at what ages do you think is a museum like this best for?
We try to reach all ages. So we toss around the term lifelong learners here. So we want to see the young kids in our summer camps and in our education programs. We want the adults to bring their families, their friends, their companies out for programs that our education department runs, team building programs that we have. So we could certainly point them in that direction. We do everything from birthday parties to corporate tours and everything in between.
What are your fundraisers or things that the community can participate in to support the museum? I know I've ran in one of those races out here in January one year, and tell us some of those opportunities where if somebody's watching and they want to help, how can they help?
Certainly. So the first thing I would say about help is come visit us. Come see us. We are free. You can't say that enough. Free admission, right? That's one of the most amazing things about this place. So come visit us and get involved. We have fundraising events. Our foundation has their yearly marathon that they do in January of every year. So there's a marathon, half marathon, 5K. Weather always seems to be brutal for that, but we always have a great turnout. So that's certainly something on the near horizon they could be involved with. And we are always wanting the community to invest in the museum. So we tell people we love to have their time, talents, or treasures, whatever they're willing to give, be it their time as a volunteer or financial donations to the foundation or just participation and sharing the museum and with their friends.
So if you volunteer, what do you volunteer to do?
We have all kinds of opportunities. So everything from archives work, aircraft restoration, even greeters at the front door. So the vast majority of people that visit the Museum of Aviation, the first face they see is a volunteer, right? And we could not operate without those volunteers. So if they're interested, I would say reach out and we'll find a place that they can fit.
Now that road race, you know, it's really flat around here, and I'm not a runner, but everyone that seems in my family is, and I'm told at least that this course for this road race, that it's great for a PR, a personal record. So if someone's looking to run their fastest ever 5K, January, it might be a little cool, not gonna lie, but you got a good shot at hitting a PR.
Are you gonna do it this year?
You could not pay me enough, but I hope a lot of people do, and I will be cheering you on right here on NBC.
There you go.
So that brings up, how many people come to the museum? I know, let's talk about pre-COVID and the bounce back you're seeing now. Could you share a little bit about that?
Certainly. So, you know, I mentioned being the second largest museum in the Air Force. So part of that is in 2019, we had 600,000 plus visitors here at the Museum of Aviation.
Wow.
So, of course, COVID impacted that, but we are rebounding, hoping for around 250 to 3,000 this year. And that's part of why we want to re-engage the community to let them know we are here and we want them at the museum.
Hey, so one goal of this, Aaron, his program is to, hey, let's go for 400,000 this year, right? That's a challenge to the community. Let's
Certainly.
hit 400 or more.
More would be great.
Right.
Of those 250, 300, maybe even 400,000 people, what do you think their favorite attraction is here? Which plane, which artifact do you just hear the most about?
So we get asked often about our SR-71, so Blackbird, that's the reconnaissance aircraft from the Cold War, very, very popular. So lots of people want to see that when they come here. It's in our Century of Flight hangar. We have some simulators that are very popular with the kids. So those are
So
always
you can
popular.
go in the simulator and...
Yeah, 3D simulator. So not my forte. I would probably get motion sick, but yeah, absolutely.
Hey, one of the things I hear about is the National STEM Academy that's based here at the museum, and I think that's something that people really want to know about. So now's a chance to promote that. Tell us what STEM means and the impact we see it having in our community.
Certainly. So STEM stands for Science, Technology, Engineering, and Math, and we are very proud to have the National STEM Academy located here at the museum. It's one of our education programs run by the foundation. They reach out and bring kids in from not just the state of Georgia, but really all over the Southeast. We have field trips that come in. They do summer camps. There's a variety of different programs that they offer. Very proud of the work that they do and reaching the community. Of course, you mentioned that. STEM is very important, especially when you talk about the Air Force and its need for young people to learn those concepts early and apply them as they go into the workforce. So that's something that the STEM Academy is very helpful for.
As the curator of the museum, whenever you have these young kids come into the museum, just aside from having a good time and having fun with their friends and seeing cool things, what do you think is the one thing that you want these kids to walk away with?
I hope they walk away with just a little bit of an appreciation of the sacrifice that a lot of the airmen have made so that they can have the ability to come to a place like this. So again, that's where we go back to story and telling the stories, the personal stories that make our artifacts and our airplanes so interesting.
Tell us a personal story about General Scott.
So General Scott was a wonderful man. He was an early champion for the museum. You and I talked earlier about that. For those who don't know, he was an ace, World War II ace, flew with the American Volunteer Group.
What's an ace mean? For people who may not know what that means.
So that means that he had 5 air-to-air kills. He actually had more than that, but he was, an ace.
Wow.
But he flew with the American Volunteer Group, fought the Japanese in China before the U.S. was officially in the war, went on to a long storied Air Force career, and then in retirement, became a champion here for the Museum of Aviation, originally from Macon, Georgia, so from the local area, and was just a long-time friend and benefactor here for the museum.
He wrote a book that was pretty famous, and there was a movie back in the 50s, maybe?
40s, yeah. So God is My Co-Pilot was the film and the book, of course. And we actually have a great exhibit on that just upstairs here in the building we're in, so come see it.
So what plane did he fly?
He flew the P-40. So we have here, just out of line of sight of the cameras, we have a P-40, very similar to the one that he flew.
It's a beautiful plane.
It's gorgeous.
It is,
It absolutely is, yeah.
Iconic with the shark's mouth on the nose, and always very interesting to see.
That's neat. And
Very
so I know
popular. You mentioned
it's another popular
very
one.
popular with visitors, yeah. Probably the most photographed spot in the museum.
Huh.
Back a little bit to the STEM Academy. So I have a child, or I have a grandchild that I think this would be good for them. Can anyone sign up to enroll their children in that?
Certainly, we have programs from individuals to homeschools to school groups that come in a more organized fashion. So there's always different things available. So I would encourage people to check our Facebook page and our website as well for a full list of offerings.
Right, and those are free?
There's a charge for some of those.
But that's worth it, right?
Absolutely.
So, Arthur, you were just telling us about General Scott and his storied career and how we were able to get this museum here thanks to him and his efforts to be able to actually do this. And you mentioned that the museum is big on storytelling, and you couldn't be more right when you say that, because whenever you walk in here, if someone has never been here, it's not just planes everywhere, but it really is a story that you guys are telling. There's documents on the wall. I mean, I'm just looking around. There's so much information that's out there. Is there anybody else aside from General Scott that stands out to you that you guys have the story told here in this museum?
How much time do you have? So there are lots of those stories throughout the museum, and we do the best we can to tell all of those. One that particularly stands out to me would be General Rick Goddard. So he was a former WALC commander, so former commander here at Robins Air Force Base. He actually helped us find and acquire an aircraft that he flew during the Vietnam War.
Wow.
We brought it here and went through about a 5-year restoration process, and it's on display now in our Neutering hangar, which is our Vietnam War focused hangar.
So what kind of plane was that?
It's an F-100D. Yeah, so small single engine tactical fighter. And it's just interesting, again, because of his connection to the community, still active in the community, by the way, and the fact that we were able to go out and get a historic aircraft that he actually flew in combat and bring it in and restore it.
Wow. Wow.
We were talking earlier about tours, and if I were to bring my family for a tour, tell us the options there and the process about that.
Certainly. So we have heritage tours. We have a heritage tour department. They handle, again, a broad range of things, anything from a birthday party to a corporate tour to just somebody that wants to bring their family and have a guided tour. Those can be scheduled, again, through our website. There's also some resources on our website for self-guided tours, if that's the preference. And we try to tailor those tours to the needs or desires of the group, what they want to see, the kind of time they have, that sort of thing.
But there's a lot of introverts out there, and so an introvert, they can come here, just them and their family, they don't have to talk to anybody, and there's literally this self-guided tour that they can actually go on?
Correct, yes.
Okay.
You mentioned a couple times, you mentioned the website, so tell us that website, tell us the Facebook page, in case somebody's going to take a break at the end and may not see the plug at the end about that. Tell us how to contact.
Sure, so it's just going to be museumofaviation.org is our website, and search for Museum of Aviation on Facebook. We'd love to hear from people, by the way, through those venues. You know, if they visited the museum, seen something they liked, or they just want to reach out and share a story with us, we'd love for them to contact us that way.
When I was here for the race a couple of years ago, I saw you had Air Force One out there. So that was pretty cool. It looks a little smaller, I think, than probably the current version. But tell us a little bit more about acquisition of the planes. How'd you get that plane, and other things you think that our viewer audience should be interested in knowing?
Certainly. So that aircraft is actually a VC-140. It was mainly used by Lyndon Johnson when he would fly to his ranch in Texas.
Huh.
It's a great example of an aircraft that undergoes just a little bit of restoration as it comes in. The exterior is mostly complete, but there's some interior work to be done. I talked earlier about our B-17 and that extensive restoration process that it's undergoing. Generally, when we acquire an aircraft, we have at least a little bit of restoration to do. Our MH-53, which is the helicopter that I mentioned earlier, is a great example of what we would term preservation. So that aircraft actually flew combat, was loaded on an aircraft, brought back to the United States, and flew directly from Hurlburt Field, Florida to Robins Air Force Base and then onto the museum grounds. So it is about as complete and authentic of an artifact as we could ask for. To include, I tell people, when you get in the cockpit of that aircraft, it still has sand and dirt and everything from its last combat missions. Wow. So we always appreciate when there's more preservation and less restoration, but that's always a unique challenge that we have.
So Arthur, I was talking to my wife last night about doing this interview, and I was telling her where we were going and who we were interviewing, and just kind of walking through some of the steps today. And she said, so how exactly do the planes get there? And I was like, that's actually a really good question. So, I mean, do you guys have to like shut down the highway? Like, do they come in all in one plane, or are y'all able to break them up? Like how, I mean, I know you're close to the airport, or to the base.
Certainly. So it depends on the size of the aircraft. So the larger aircraft, including our B-1, EC-135, some of the larger aircraft we have, they have come down to 47. So if anybody feels free to Google SR-71 on a highway, you'll probably see a picture of our SR-71 with a police escort coming down Highway 247.
So it shuts down everything, I would imagine.
Generally, yeah. The smaller aircraft, though, we can usually bring an alternate route through Robins Air Force Base.
So how many other, is it the Blackbird?
It is.
How many of those are in museums somewhere around the world?
I don't know the exact number off the top of my head, but I do know that the aircraft we have here at Robins, so the specific tail number that we have, set the absolute world speed record. So it is that actual aircraft here.
Do we know
What speed was
Yeah,
it?
that's my question. Yeah.
I knew you guys were going to say
It was fast, right?
2,193.67 miles per hour. Don't quote me on that. I'm sorry. I'll have to look it up, and then we can re-answer that question if you want to use it.
Right.
I think it's 2,193.67, but I'll have to check.
Wow, so this plane here set that speed
did.
record.
Right.
Wow. Incredible.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Right.
So Dr. Harper, I'm curious about something.
Yeah.
They have over 250,000 people that are going to be here this year.
Right.
Inevitably, there's going to be someone that's going to be walking around and they feel some aches and pains in their legs. Is that necessarily varicose veins? And if so, what should they do about it?
Well, you know, if you have bulgy veins or you got spatterings, you know you got a little bit of vein disease. But you can have tired, achy, heavy legs when you're standing or on your feet a lot, working or sitting at work, and you can even have vein disease without anything visible. So if you have the symptoms or if you've got obviously visible problems, just call us up or go to veinspecialist.com or our website and get some information. We'd love to do an evaluation and see how we can help you.
Wonderful. Arthur, I think this place is an incredible asset to the Middle Georgia area. We are so blessed that it's here and that we have this just amazing resource for all of us to be able to come, and we've been able to have this for years and years. So thank you for doing what you do. It's great to have this here in Middle Georgia.
Yeah, thank you for your time.
And thank you guys for joining us this week. Stay tuned for where me and Dr. Harper will be next week. You never know where that might be.
I'm a respiratory therapist, 33-year-old mother of two, with one of my children having medical needs. I enjoy being outside with my family, and I enjoy riding horses as one of my personal pastimes. After having two children, my varicose veins were really painful, and I knew I needed help in order to keep up with my busy lifestyle. That's when I reached out to the only accredited vein center in Central Georgia, Vein Specialists of the South. Meeting with the VSS team, they listened to my concerns and developed a treatment plan perfect for me and my hectic schedule. During my procedure, I could tell the staff truly cared about me and what they do. The procedure was really quick. They put on my favorite music and made me feel completely comfortable the entire time. Recovery was easy, and I was glad I didn't wait. And most of all, it was covered by my insurance. Now, there's nothing stopping this mommy from living her best life. If you need vein care, I encourage you to call Vein Specialists of the South today.